The great hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with angry voices. Representatives from dozens of alien species filled the curved seats that rose like steps around the central speaking platform. Their different forms created a strange mix of colors, shapes, and sounds. Some had scales that changed color when they were upset. Others made clicking noises with their claws. A few released sweet-smelling gases that meant they were frustrated. Hyun-woo stood at the speaker's platform in the center of the hall. He wore the simple gray uniform of the Human Colonial Federation. His dark hair was neat, and his face showed no emotion as the alien voices grew louder around him. He had been the human ambassador for 3 years now, and he had learned to stay calm during these meetings. The humans refused to explain themselves, said Counselor Velthara, her blue skin turning a darker shade. She was from the Kalari, a race that controlled most of the galaxy's trade routes. For 30 years, they have blocked off their space. No one can enter, no one can trade, no one can even visit. Murmurs of agreement came from around the hall. Jae-min, the Council's chief military advisor, touched his datapad. A large map appeared in the air above the platform. It showed the galaxy with all its star systems marked in different colors. In one section, 847 star systems were marked in red. "This is human space," Jae-min said. His voice was calm, but his 4 eyes showed concern. "Every probe we send gets turned back at exactly the same coordinates. Every diplomatic ship receives the same message. Every merchant vessel is told to leave immediately." The holographic map rotated slowly. The red zone looked like a perfect sphere carved out of the galaxy. Other species' territories had rough edges where they met their neighbors. Trade routes crossed back and forth between different areas. But human space was different. It had a clean, sharp border that no one crossed. "What are they hiding?" asked General Kextar from the Grexan Empire. His gray skin had thick ridges, and his voice rumbled like distant thunder. "No species builds walls this strong unless they have something to protect, or something to hide." Hyun-woo stepped forward. "Honored counselors, humanity has been clear about our position. We maintain our territorial boundaries for important reasons. We ask that all species respect these boundaries. But why?" Velthara's skin flashed bright blue, showing her anger. "The Galactic Trade Agreement requires open borders for peaceful commerce. You signed this agreement 30 years ago." "We did," Hyun-woo said, "and we follow it in all areas outside our protected space." "Protected from what?" This came from Elder Thren, who spoke for the peaceful Threnody Collective. His voice was soft and musical, but it carried through the hall. "We have been allies for 3 decades. We have fought together against pirates and raiders. We have shared technology and knowledge, but you will not share this one thing with us." So Young sat in the visitors section, watching the debate. She was a human scientist who worked at the Council's research center. She studied how different species could work together. Most days, she loved her job. But meetings like this made her stomach hurt. She had heard the whispers in the hallways. Some aliens thought humans were building superweapons. Others believed they were preparing for war. A few thought they had found something valuable and wanted to keep it for themselves. So Young knew the truth was different, but she could not explain it. The rules were clear. No human could talk about what lay inside their protected space. Not even humans who worked for other species. "Perhaps," said Counselor Zenthak, "the humans fear that we will judge them for something they have done." His snake-like body coiled and uncoiled as he spoke. "Perhaps they have made mistakes they wish to hide." More murmurs filled the hall. Some aliens nodded their heads or showed agreement in their own ways. The idea was taking root. Humans were hiding their shame. Hyun-woo's face stayed calm, but So Young saw his hands tighten slightly. "We fear nothing from this council," he said. "Our boundaries exist for good reasons. Some barriers protect everyone." "Protect from what?" General Kextar stood up from his seat. His large form cast a shadow over several smaller representatives. "You speak in riddles, human. If there is a threat, we should face it together. If there is danger, we should know about it." "Some knowledge comes with a price," Hyunwoo said quietly. "Some burdens are too heavy to share." The hall fell silent for a moment. Then Velthara spoke again. 30 years of mystery is enough. The council demands answers." "I have given you the only answer I can give," Hyunwoo replied. Jaemin touched his datapad again. The holographic map changed to show ship movements around human space. Hundreds of alien vessels appeared as small dots of light. They formed a ring around the human border, but none crossed inside. "Every day our ships patrol this border," Jaemin said. "Every day they are turned away by automated messages. The same words, every time. You are approaching restricted space. Turn back immediately. No explanation, no negotiation, no exceptions. Not even for medical emergencies," added Dr. Yilthara, the council's chief medical officer. 3 months ago, a Kalari hospital ship was carrying patients who needed special treatment. The nearest facility was in human space. They were turned away. So-young remembered that incident. She had tried to contact human medical authorities, but they had simply directed the ship to a human facility outside the protected zone. The patients had lived, but barely. "We provide medical aid at our border stations," Hyunwoo said. "No one who needs help is turned away." "But why can we not enter?" Elder Thren asked. "What could be so dangerous that you must keep us all out?" For just a moment, Hyunwoo's calm mask slipped. So-young saw something in his eyes. Not fear, exactly, but something heavy and sad. "Some doors," he said, "should stay closed." The debate continued for another hour, but it went in circles. The aliens demanded answers. Hyunwoo gave the same responses. Finally, Jaemin called for order. "The council will vote," he announced. "All in favor of organizing a diplomatic mission to human space?" Hands, claws, tentacles, and other appendages rose around the hall. So-young counted quickly. Almost every representative voted yes. Only a few abstained. None voted no. "The motion passes," Jaemin said. "We will organize a joint fleet to enter human space and discover what lies within." Hyunwoo stood very still. Then he spoke, and his voice carried clearly through the hall despite being quiet. "I hope you understand what you are choosing to do." He gathered his papers and walked toward the exit. As he passed So-young's section, she heard him whisper something in Korean. She did not understand the words, but the tone made her shiver. Later, as the hall emptied, So-young overheard Velthara talking to General Kextar. "What do you think they are hiding?" the Kalari asked. "Something valuable," Kextar rumbled. "Why else would they guard it so carefully?" So-young wanted to tell them they were wrong, but the rules were clear, and even if she could speak, she was not sure they would believe her. The truth was harder to accept than any treasure or weapon. Some secrets, she thought, were kept not because they were valuable, but because they were terrible. The great hall grew quiet as the last representatives left. Soon, So-young knew, ships from across the galaxy would gather. They would cross the line that humans had drawn in the stars. They would learn what lay beyond. She just hoped they would survive the learning. The fleet gathered at Waypoint Station, just outside human space. 12 ships from 6 different species formed a loose formation against the backdrop of stars. Each vessel was different, built according to the needs and nature of its crew. The Grexon warship looked like a metal mountain with weapons sprouting from every surface. The Kalari merchant cruiser gleamed with smooth curves and bright lights. The Threnody science vessel resembled a crystal flower that seemed to sing as it moved through space. Fleet Admiral Kextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Iron Fang. His thick fingers drummed against the command chair as he watched the other ships through the main view screen. This was not the largest fleet he had ever commanded, but it might be the most important. "All ships report ready," announced his communications officer, a young Grexon named Thekvar. "The humans have sent their automated warning message 17 times in the past hour." Kextar nodded. The message was always the same. "You are approaching restricted space. Turn back immediately." No explanation, no negotiation, just the same cold words that had kept the galaxy out of human territory for 30 years. "Admiral?" came a voice from behind him. Kextar turned to see Dr. Minho approaching. The human wore a simple blue uniform with the symbols of the Galactic Council. He had volunteered to join this mission, hoping to serve as a bridge between his people and the rest of the galaxy. "Dr. Minho," Kextar said, "are you ready to enter your people's territory?" Minho's face was pale, but he nodded. "I hope this mission will help both sides understand each other better." Kextar studied the human's expression. Minho looked nervous, but not in the way someone would be nervous about entering enemy territory. It was different, like someone walking into a place where they might find something they did not want to see. On the science ship Harmony, Dr. Boram checked her instruments for the 10th time. She was the mission's lead archaeologist, tasked with studying any ruins or artifacts they might find in human space. Her species, the Kethmori, had natural curiosity about ancient things. Their large, multifaceted eyes could see details that others missed. "All sensors are functioning properly," reported her assistant, a young Threnody named Silandra. "We should be able to detect any artificial structures within a range of 3 light hours." Boram nodded, but her attention was focused on the human liaison aboard their ship. Tae-hyun sat at a nearby console, supposedly helping with translations and cultural context, but Boram noticed that his hands shook slightly as he worked. His breathing was too quick. Something was making him very anxious. "Tae-hyun," she said softly, "are you feeling well?" The human looked up, and Boram saw something in his eyes that made her pause. It was not fear of the unknown. It was fear of the known. "I am fine, Dr. Boram. Just concerned about how this mission might go." "All ships, this is Admiral Kextar," came the voice over the communication system. "We are beginning our approach to the human border. Maintain formation and follow my lead." The fleet moved forward, crossing the invisible line that marked the edge of human space. Boram felt a strange tingling sensation, as if they had passed through some kind of energy field. Her instruments showed no unusual readings, but something felt different. "Warning!" came the automated human message again. "You are approaching restricted space. Turn back immediately." "All ships, ignore the warning," Kextar ordered. "Continue forward." They traveled deeper into human territory, passing through empty star systems. Boram's sensors picked up signs of old mining operations and abandoned space stations. Everything looked normal, but she noticed something odd. The human structures were not built the way she expected. "Silandra," she said, "look at these readings. These mining facilities are positioned strangely." The Threnody studied the data. "You are right. They are not placed to maximize resource extraction. They seem to be placed to monitor something." Boram switched to long-range sensors and began scanning deeper into human space. What she found made her pause. "These are not mining operations," she said slowly. "They are watchtowers." On the Iron Fang, Tae-hyun had grown more agitated as they traveled deeper into human territory. He kept checking his personal communicator, trying to reach someone in the human government. Each time, he received only automated responses telling him to leave restricted space immediately. "Dr. Min Ho," Kextar said, "can you explain why your people are not responding to our communications?" Min Ho looked uncomfortable. I am not sure. This is unusual. Normally, there would be some kind of official response to a diplomatic mission. Unless," Kextar said, They do not want us here for reasons they cannot speak about openly. They passed through 7 more star systems, each one showing signs of human presence, but no active human ships or stations. It was like traveling through a ghost territory full of abandoned structures and silent monitors. "Admiral," called his sensor operator, "I am detecting massive installations in the next system. They appear to be military in nature." The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel near a system with 4 planets. Immediately, their screens filled with images of enormous space stations and defensive platforms. The structures were clearly human-made, but they were built on a scale that impressed even Kextar. "By the ancestors," whispered Thekvar. "Look at the size of those guns." The defensive platforms were indeed massive, each one the size of a small moon. Their weapons could probably destroy an entire fleet with a single shot. But as the alien ships approached, the platforms remained silent and motionless. "They are not powering up their weapons," reported the tactical officer. "In fact, they do not seem to be active at all." Boram studied the platforms with her advanced sensors. "Admiral, these installations are not designed the way I would expect. The weapons are pointing inward, toward the center of human space, not outward, toward potential invaders." This information spread through the fleet, causing confusion among the crews. Why would humans build defensive weapons that pointed toward their own territory? Tae-hyun stood up suddenly from his console. "Admiral, I request permission to contact Human Command directly. This situation is becoming dangerous." "Dangerous how?" Kextar asked. "Please," Tae-hyun said, and his voice was almost pleading. "We should not go further. There are protocols, rules, boundaries exist for good reasons." Kextar studied the human's face. "What are you not telling us?" Before Tae-hyun could answer, Dr. Boram's voice came over the communication system. "All ships, you need to see this. I am sending data about the 4th planet in this system." The screens filled with images from Boram's deep scans. The 4th planet had once been green and blue, covered with oceans and continents. Cities had once dotted its surface, but now it was brown and gray, completely lifeless. "This planet supported a large population," Boram reported. "I estimate at least 2 billion beings lived here, but there are no life signs now. None at all." "What happened to them?" asked Captain Yilston from the Kalari ship. "I am not sure," Boram replied. "The cities are still there, but they look empty. Not destroyed by war or natural disaster, just empty." Minho moved to stand beside Kextar. "Admiral, I strongly recommend that we do not investigate that planet." "Why?" Kextar demanded. "Because," Tae-hyun said from across the bridge, "some things are better left undisturbed." But Kextar was a military commander, and mystery was something he could not ignore. "All ships prepare landing parties. We are going to find out what happened on that planet." Tae-hyun closed his eyes and began speaking quietly in Korean. Minho recognized the words. Tae-hyun was praying. As the fleet moved toward the dead planet, strange energy readings began appearing on their sensors. The readings were unlike anything in their databases. They seemed to pulse with a rhythm that was almost alive. "Admiral," reported his science officer, "these energy signatures are coming from the planet's surface. They appear to be concentrated in large crystalline formations." "Crystals?" Kextar asked. "Yes, sir. Very large crystals. Some of them are several kilometers in diameter." Boram's voice came over the communication system again, but this time she sounded worried. "Admiral, I recommend extreme caution. These crystals are emitting energy patterns I have never seen before, and the humans aboard our ships are becoming very agitated." Kextar looked at Minho and Tae-hyun. Both humans had gone very pale. Tae-hyun was still praying, and Minho was staring at the view screen with horror in his eyes. "What are you not telling us?" Kextar asked again. Minho opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again. Finally, he said, Some secrets are kept not to protect the secret keeper, but to protect everyone else. The fleet continued its approach to the dead planet, unaware that their energy signatures were beginning to resonate with the massive crystals on the surface below. In the deepest parts of those crystals, something that had been sleeping for decades began to stir. Tae-hyun's prayers grew more urgent, and he added a new phrase that Minho recognized. "Please let them still be sleeping," he whispered. "Please let them still be sleeping." The landing party touched down on the dead planet's surface with a soft thud. Dr. Bo-Ram stepped out of the shuttle first, her equipment scanning the area around them. The air was breathable but felt wrong somehow, like it was too thin or too thick. The sky was a dull gray color that hurt to look at for too long. "Readings are stable," she announced to the others. "No immediate dangers detected." Behind her came Ji-hoon, a human scientist who had insisted on joining the ground team. His face was covered by a breathing mask, but his eyes showed deep worry. With them was Yoon-ji, a human military officer who carried more weapons than seemed necessary for a scientific mission. "The nearest crystal formation is 2 kilometers to the north," Bo-Ram said, checking her scanner. "It appears to be dormant, but I am reading unusual energy patterns." As they walked across the planet's surface, Bo-Ram studied the landscape around them. What she saw made no sense. The ground was covered with a strange dust that her equipment could not identify. Trees stood like gray statues, their leaves turned to ash but still clinging to the branches. Even the rocks looked wrong, as if something had drained all the life from them. "This was not caused by weapons," she said to herself. "No bombs or radiation could do this." "What do you think happened here?" asked her assistant, Sil-Andra, who had remained in orbit aboard the research ship. "I do not know," Bo-Ram replied through her communicator. "It looks like something consumed all the life on this planet, but left the structures intact." They reached the first crystal formation after an hour of walking. Bo-Ram stopped and stared at it in amazement. The crystal was huge, easily the size of a city building. It was perfectly clear, like diamond, but it pulsed with a soft light that seemed to come from deep within. "Incredible," she whispered. "The energy patterns are unlike anything I have ever seen." Ji-hoon approached the crystal carefully, his scanner beeping rapidly. When he saw the readings, his face went white. "We need to leave," he said urgently. "Right now." "Why?" Bo-Ram asked. "What do your readings show?" "These crystals," Ji-hoon said, his voice shaking, "they are not natural formations. They are containers." "Containers for what?" Before Ji-hoon could answer, Yoon-ji called out from behind them. "Over here! I found something!" They hurried to where she stood, near what looked like the entrance to an underground facility. The metal doors had human writing on them, but also symbols that none of them recognized. Yoon-ji had managed to get one door open, revealing a dark corridor leading down into the planet's surface. "Military installation," Yoon-ji said. "Very old, but the power is still on." They entered the facility carefully, their lights casting strange shadows on the walls. The corridors were built like a fortress, with thick metal walls and heavy blast doors every few meters. But as they went deeper, Bo-Ram realized something odd. "These defenses are built backwards," she said. "They are designed to keep something in, not to keep invaders out." They found the first room full of human military equipment. Weapons, armor, and supplies were stacked everywhere. But the weapons were unlike anything Bo-Ram had seen before. They looked more like tools for destroying reality than for fighting enemies. "What kind of war were you fighting here?" she asked Ji-hoon. The human scientist stared at the weapons with horror in his eyes. "Not the kind of war you think," he said quietly. They continued deeper into the facility until they reached what appeared to be a command center. Banks of computers lined the walls, most of them still active. In the center of the room, they found a human soldier in stasis. Yunji checked the stasis chamber's readings. He is alive, but he has been sleeping for decades. Should we wake him up? Yes, Boram said. He might have answers. The stasis chamber opened with a hiss of escaping gas. The man inside was middle-aged, with graying hair and old scars on his face. He opened his eyes slowly and looked around in confusion. "Status report," he said automatically, then focused on the aliens around him. "Who are you? How did you get here?" "I am Dr. Boram from the Galactic Council," she said. "We are here to investigate this system. What happened on this planet?" The man sat up slowly in the stasis chamber. "My name is Dong Hyun, Security Chief for Operation Containment. What year is it?" "Galactic Standard 2387. Boram replied. Dong Hyun's face went pale. 70 years, he whispered. "I have been asleep for 70 years. "Operation Containment?" Boram asked. "What were you containing?" Dong Hyun looked at the other humans in the group. Jihoon and Yunji both nodded to him, some kind of silent communication passing between them. "The Devourers," Dong Hyun said finally. "We called them the Devourers." "Who were they?" Boram asked. "Not who," Dong Hyun replied. "What?" "They were not a species like you or me. They were something else, something that should not exist." He stood up from the stasis chamber, moving carefully. "How many ships are in your fleet?" 12, Boram answered. Dong Hyun closed his eyes. "Too many, far too many." "What do you mean?" "The crystals on the surface," Dong Hyun said. "They respond to energy signatures. The more ships you have, the stronger the signal becomes. If there are 12 ships..." He trailed off and began working at one of the computer terminals. Data appeared on the screens around them. Boram saw images of the planet as it had been 70 years ago, green and blue and full of life. Then she saw images of the things that had destroyed it. The Devourers were hard to describe. They looked like darkness given form, like holes in reality that moved and consumed everything around them. In the images, Boram watched in horror as they swept across cities, and everything they touched simply stopped existing. "They do not kill," Dong Hyun explained. "They unmake. They consume not just matter and energy, but the fundamental forces that hold reality together. When they feed, the very laws of physics break down." "How did you stop them?" Boram asked. "We did not stop them," Dong Hyun replied. "We could not kill them. Nothing we tried could destroy them. So we found another way." More images appeared. On the screens, human ships, thousands of them, surrounding the planet. Scientists working frantically on some kind of massive device. "We induced a form of stasis across their entire civilization," Dong Hyun continued. "It took 15 years and cost millions of human lives. But we managed to force them into a deep sleep. Then we built the containment systems to make sure they stayed asleep." "The crystals," Jihoon said suddenly. "The crystals are the stasis chambers." Dong Hyun nodded. "Each crystal contains thousands of Devourers in forced hibernation. We could not destroy them, so we had to become their guardians." Boram felt a chill run through her. "How many are there?" "On this planet alone?" "Approximately 50 million. There are 6 other worlds in human space with similar populations." The silence in the command center was broken by a soft beeping sound from one of the computers. Dong Hyun looked at the display and his face went white. "No," he whispered. "This cannot be happening." "What is it?" Boram asked. "The crystals," Dong Hyun said, his voice shaking. "Your ship's energy signatures are resonating with the stasis crystals. The harmonics are building up." On the screen, they could see energy readings from the crystal formations on the surface. The patterns were becoming more active, pulsing faster and brighter. "What does that mean?" Boram demanded. Dong Hyun turned to face her, and she saw pure terror in his eyes. It means they are waking up. Above them, on the surface of the dead planet, the largest crystal formation began to glow more brightly. Deep within its core, something that had been sleeping for 70 years stirred and opened eyes that were not really eyes. In orbit, Admiral Kextar watched his sensors detect increasing energy emissions from the planet's surface. "All ships, be ready to evacuate the landing party immediately," he ordered. But it was already too late. The first crystal cracked with a sound that his instruments described as impossible. It was not just noise, but something that hurt reality itself. On the planet's surface, Dong-hyun grabbed Bo-ram's arm. "We have to get to the communication center," he said urgently. "I have to warn Human Command that containment has been breached." "What will happen if they fully wake up?" Bo-ram asked as they ran through the corridors. Dong-hyun's answer made her blood turn cold. "They will consume this planet in days. Then they will spread to other worlds. Within a few years, they could devour entire star systems." As they reached the communication center, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. On the screens, they could see more crystals beginning to crack and glow. "Human Command, this is Security Chief Dong-hyun," he said into the communicator. "Containment breach at Site 7. Repeat, containment breach at Site 7. Unknown alien vessels have triggered a resonance cascade. Request immediate activation of Protocol 7. The voice that answered was cold and professional. "Confirmed. Dong-hyun, Protocol 7 is being implemented. All ships in the system have 12 hours to evacuate before stellar collapse initiation." Bo-ram stared at him in shock. "Stellar collapse? You are going to destroy the entire star system?" Dong-hyun nodded grimly. "It is the only way to make sure they do not spread to inhabited worlds." On the surface above them, the first devourer emerged from its crystal prison and tasted freedom for the first time in 70 years. It reached out with senses that could perceive dimensions beyond normal space and found something wonderful. The sound that came from the cracking crystal was unlike anything Admiral Kextar had ever heard. It was not just noise traveling through space, but something that seemed to attack the very idea of sound itself. His instruments could not properly record it, and several crew members collapsed from the pain it caused in their minds. "What was that?" demanded Captain Yilsten from the Kalari ship Bright Trader. "Unknown," Kextar replied, but his voice was tight with concern. "All ships, prepare for immediate evacuation of the landing party." On the planet's surface, the crystal formation that had been glowing began to crack apart completely. As the pieces fell away, something emerged that made Dr. Bo-ram's mind struggle to understand what she was seeing. It was like a hole in the world, a space where reality had been cut away. But the hole moved and seemed to look around with senses that should not exist. "Devourer," Dong-hyun whispered. "The first one is awake." Through the facility's cameras, they watched as the entity moved across the planet's surface. Everywhere it went, the already dead landscape became even more lifeless. The gray dust turned to nothing. The stone statues of trees simply stopped existing. Even the air around it seemed to thin and disappear. "It is feeding," Ji-hoon said, his voice filled with horror. "It is consuming the basic forces that hold matter together." "How fast do they spread?" Bo-ram asked. "Once they start feeding, they grow stronger quickly," Dong-hyun replied. "And their awakening sends out signals that wake up others." As if his words had summoned them, more crystals across the planet began to crack and glow. Each one released another impossible entity that immediately began consuming everything around it. In orbit, Admiral Kextar watched his sensors detect more and more energy signatures appearing on the planet's surface. "Landing party, return to your shuttle immediately," he ordered. But when Bo-ram and the others reached the surface, they found their shuttle surrounded by a growing zone where physics no longer worked properly. The air shimmered like water, and metal objects near the shuttle were slowly dissolving into nothing. "We cannot reach the shuttle," Yoonji reported. "The reality distortion field is too strong. All ships, Emergency evacuation protocol, Kextar ordered. Send down every available shuttle and transport. But as the rescue shuttles approached the planet, they encountered the same problem. The areas around the awakening devourers had become zones where normal matter could not exist safely. 3 shuttles were lost when they tried to enter these fields, simply ceasing to exist as if they had never been built. On the surface, Dong-hyun led the group deeper into the underground facility. "There is an emergency bunker in the lower levels," he said. "It has shields that might protect us temporarily." As they ran through the corridors, alarms continued to sound throughout the facility. The lights flickered as the power systems struggled to maintain function in the growing reality distortions above. "How long until your Protocol 7 activates?" Boram asked. 11 hours and 37 minutes, Dong-hyun replied. "If we can survive that long, the stellar collapse will destroy everything in this system." "Including us," Yoon-ji pointed out. "Including us," Dong-hyun agreed. "But it will also ensure that the devourers cannot spread to other worlds." They reached the bunker just as the first devourers began to sense the underground facility. The entities could perceive things that existed in dimensions beyond normal space, and they were drawn to concentrations of energy and life. "Bunker sealed," announced the facility's computer system. "Emergency power active. Estimated survival time in current conditions, 4 hours, 23 minutes. Boram stared at Dong-hyun in shock. 4 hours? But you said we need to survive 11 hours. "The bunker was designed to protect against conventional weapons," Dong-hyun replied. "Not against entities that can unmake the fundamental laws of physics." Above them, more and more devourers were awakening and beginning to spread across the planet's surface. Their feeding created expanding zones of non-existence that grew larger every minute. In orbit, Admiral Kextar faced a terrible decision. His fleet was trapped in a system with awakening cosmic horrors, and they had no way to rescue their people on the surface, but he could not abandon them. "All ships, combat formation," he ordered. "We are going to try to fight these things." "Admiral," reported his tactical officer, "our weapons are having no effect. The energy beams are being absorbed by the entities, and our missiles simply cease to exist when they get close." On the bridge of the science vessel Harmony, Hae-won studied the energy readings from the planet. As the ship's physicist, she was trying to understand what they were dealing with. "Admiral," she reported over the fleet communication channel, "these entities are not just consuming matter and energy. They are consuming space-time itself. Wherever they go, the basic structure of reality breaks down." "Can we contain them?" Kextar asked. "Not with any technology I know of," Hae-won replied. "They exist partially outside our normal dimensions. Our weapons cannot touch them because they are not entirely in our reality to begin with." The situation grew worse as the devourers began to leave the planet's surface. The first ones to fully awaken had fed enough to develop the ability to move through space without ships. They appeared near the alien fleet as holes in reality that moved with purpose and intelligence. The Kalari ship Bright Trader was the first to encounter one directly. Captain Yilston tried to maneuver away, but the entity moved faster than anything should be able to move. When it touched the ship's shields, the shields did not fail or overload. They simply stopped existing. "Mayday!" came Yilston's voice over the communication channel. "The entity is touching our hull! Our hull is disappearing!" The other ships watched in horror as sections of the Bright Trader began to vanish. Not explode or melt, but simply cease to be there. The ship's emergency systems could not even understand what was happening, because their sensors could not detect something that existed in the spaces between normal reality. "All ships, maximum distance from the entities," Kextar ordered. "Do not let them touch you." But the devourers were learning and adapting. As they fed on the ship's matter and energy, they grew stronger and more aware. The largest one, which had been the first to awaken, began to examine the alien fleet with senses that could perceive things beyond the normal spectrum. It found the ships interesting. They contained so much organized energy and matter. And inside them were living beings whose life force created complex patterns in dimensions that most creatures could not even sense. The entity reached out with abilities that existed outside normal physics and began to unravel the fundamental forces that held the Iron Fang together. Admiral Kexter felt his ship shudder as sections of the hull began to disappear. "Emergency power to all systems," he ordered. "All ships, retreat to minimum safe distance." But there was no safe distance. The Devourers could move through space in ways that ignored the normal rules of travel. They appeared wherever they wanted to be, consuming everything they touched. On the planet's surface, in the emergency bunker, Boram and the others felt the facility shaking as the entities above them continued to grow stronger. The power systems were failing as the Devourers consumed the energy sources that fed them. "How did humanity fight these things for 15 years?" Boram asked. "We did not fight them directly," Dong-hyun replied. "We developed weapons that could damage reality itself, making it impossible for them to exist in those areas. But using such weapons was almost as dangerous as the entities themselves." "What kind of weapons?" "Devices that could collapse dimensional barriers, create zones of negative space, unravel the quantum foam that underlies all existence," Dong-hyun said. "We called them reality bombs." "And you used these weapons?" "We had no choice. We lost entire star systems before we developed technology that could even slow them down. Above them, the facility's main power core finally failed as a devourer consumed the reactor that had been providing energy for decades. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows on the bunker walls. 2 hours until stellar collapse," announced the computer system. In orbit, Admiral Kextar received an urgent communication from human space. "Admiral, this is Fleet Admiral Ye Jin of the Human Defense Force. We are en route to your position with a containment fleet." "How long until you arrive?" Kextar asked. 57 minutes, Yejin replied. "Can you survive that long?" Kextar looked at his tactical display. 3 of his ships had already been partially consumed by the Devourers. The entities were growing stronger every minute, and more were awakening on the planet's surface. "We'll try," he said. But as he spoke, the largest devourer reached out with senses that spanned multiple dimensions and detected something interesting. Beyond this star system, in the direction the alien ships had come from, there were more worlds. Worlds full of life and energy and organized matter. The entity had been hungry for 70 years. Now it was time to feed properly. It began to move toward the edge of the star system, followed by others of its kind. They had tasted the energy signatures of the alien ships, and now they could follow those signatures back to their sources. The galaxy beyond human space contained billions of living beings who had no idea what was coming for them. Fleet Admiral Ye Jin arrived at the edge of the dying star system with 300 human ships. They moved in perfect formation, their hulls marked with symbols that the alien survivors had never seen before. These were not exploration vessels or diplomatic ships. They were weapons built for a war that most of the galaxy did not know had ever been fought. "Admiral Kextar," came Yejin's voice over the communication channel. "Report your status." Kextar looked around his damaged bridge. Half his crew was dead or injured, and his ship was held together by emergency power and determination. "We have lost 6 ships completely," he replied. "The entities are spreading beyond the planet. Some are moving toward the system's edge." "Understood," Yejin said. Her voice was cold and professional, but Kextar could hear the weight of terrible knowledge behind her words. "All alien vessels, retreat to coordinates I am sending now. Do not deviate from that position." The human fleet moved past the alien survivors with smooth efficiency. Each ship was equipped with weapons that seemed to bend light around them and engines that left strange ripples in space itself. Captain In-Su commanded one of the lead human vessels, a ship called Silent Guardian. His crew had trained for this moment their entire careers, hoping it would never come. Now they watched their instruments detect dozens of devourers spreading across the star system like an infection of unreality. "All ships, deploy reality anchors," In-Su ordered. "Begin containment protocol." The human ships released strange devices that spread out through the system. The devices did not look like normal technology. They seemed to exist partially outside normal space, creating zones where the laws of physics became more rigid and defined. On the dead planet, in the emergency bunker, Boram felt the facility shake as something massive landed on the surface above them. Through the security cameras, she saw human soldiers in armor that seemed to shimmer with impossible energies. "Rescue team is here," announced Dong-hyun, "but we may not be able to reach them." The bunker's systems detected the reality distortions above them growing stronger. The devourers had learned that there were living beings hiding beneath the surface, and they were trying to reach them. "Emergency evacuation protocol activated," announced the bunker's computer. "Preparing dimensional shift." Boram stared at Dong-hyun in confusion. "Dimensional shift? The bunker can move partially outside normal space for short periods," he explained. "It is the only way to travel safely through areas where reality has been damaged." The bunker filled with a strange humming sound, and Boram felt reality twist around them. For a moment that seemed to last forever and no time at all, they existed in a place between spaces. Then they materialized on the planet's surface near a human rescue ship. "Move quickly," ordered the rescue team leader, a woman whose armor bore the name Captain Subin. "We have perhaps 10 minutes before this area becomes completely unstable." As they ran toward the rescue ship, Boram saw the true scope of what was happening on the planet's surface. Entire regions had simply stopped existing, leaving behind voids that hurt to look at. The devourers moved through these empty spaces like sharks through water, consuming everything they touched. "How many of them are there?" she asked Captain Subin. "On this planet? Approximately 3 million have awakened so far," Subin replied. "The others are still in stasis, but that will not last much longer." They reached the rescue ship just as the reality distortions around them began to intensify. The ship's engines were unlike anything Boram had seen before, seeming to push against dimensions that should not exist. In orbit, the battle between human forces and the devourers had begun in earnest. But it was not the kind of battle that most species would recognize. The humans did not try to destroy the entities directly. Instead, they used weapons that attacked the fundamental structure of reality itself. Admiral Ye Jin stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Eternal Vigil, watching her ships deploy weapons that had cost humanity decades of research and millions of lives to develop. Each reality bomb created a zone where the basic laws of physics became hostile to entities that existed between dimensions. "Containment field at 60%, reported her tactical officer. "The larger devourers are adapting to our weapons." "Understood," Ye Jin replied. "Begin Phase 2. Phase 2 involved something that even the human crews found disturbing. Ships began to sacrifice themselves, flying directly into groups of devourers while carrying devices that would collapse local space-time. The explosions that resulted were not explosions in any normal sense, but implosions of reality itself. Captain In-Su watched 3 of his sister ships disappear into nothingness, taking dozens of devourers with them. "Admiral," he reported, "we are holding them within the system, but our losses are severe." "I know," Ye Jin replied, "but we cannot let them reach populated space." Meanwhile, Admiral Kextar and the surviving alien ships watched in amazement and horror as the humans fought a war against cosmic horror itself. He began to understand why humanity had isolated itself for 30 years. "Dr. Minho," he said to the human scientist aboard his ship, "how long have your people been fighting?" These things? Minho's face was gray with exhaustion and grief. The first colony ships found them 73 years ago, he replied. We have been their guardians ever since. Guardians? Someone had to watch over them, Minho said quietly. Someone had to make sure they stayed contained. The burden fell to us because we were the first to find them. On the rescue ship carrying Bo Ram and the others, Captain Subin received an urgent message from Fleet Admiral Ye Jin. The message was brief, but devastating. The containment was failing. Too many devourers had awakened, and some of the largest ones were beginning to develop the ability to exist fully in normal space. What does that mean? Bo Ram asked. It means they are adapting, Subin replied, learning to function within our reality instead of existing between dimensions. Once that happens, our reality anchors will not be able to contain them. The rescue ship reached the fleet just as Admiral Ye Jin made the most difficult decision of her career. All ships, begin evacuation of the system, she ordered. We are implementing final containment protocol. Admiral, came Captain In-Su's voice over the communication channel. Final protocol will require someone to trigger the stellar collapse from within the system's center. I know, Ye Jin replied. Silent Guardian is the most heavily shielded ship in the fleet. You have the best chance of reaching the target coordinates. In-Su understood what she was asking. The stellar collapse device had to be activated from close to the system's star. No ship could survive the process, but someone had to guide it to the right position to ensure that the resulting black hole would contain all the devourers. Understood, Admiral, In-Su said. It has been an honor serving with you. As the human, fleet began to withdraw from the system. Captain In-Su piloted the Silent Guardian toward the central star. Behind him, the devourers sensed what was happening and began to converge on his ship with desperate hunger. The largest entity, which had been the first to awaken, reached In-Su's ship just as he activated the stellar collapse device. For a moment, the devourer and the human captain existed in the same impossible space, and In-Su felt his mind touch something that was vast and alien and eternally hungry, but he also felt something else. The devourer was not evil in any way, that humans understood evil. It was simply what it was, a force of entropy and consumption that existed because the universe allowed such things to exist. It had no choice in what it did, just as gravity had no choice in pulling objects together. I am sorry, In-Su whispered as reality began to collapse around them. I am sorry that we could not find another way. The star system imploded in a cascade of impossible energies. The devourers, the human ships still within the system, and Captain In-Su himself were drawn into a growing black hole that consumed everything within its reach. Admiral Ye Jin watched from a safe distance as the system that had contained humanity's greatest secret became a point of infinite darkness in space. All ships report status, she ordered. The surviving human vessels had taken severe damage, but they had accomplished their mission. The devourers were contained once again, this time permanently. Admiral Kextar approached Ye Jin's ship in his damaged vessel. Admiral, he said over the communication channel, I owe you an apology. We did not understand. No, Ye Jin replied, you did not. But now you do. 6 months later, Ambassador Hyun Woo stood once again before the Galactic Council. But this time, the hall was silent as he spoke. The representatives had learned what lay behind humanity's borders, and they understood the price that had been paid to keep them safe. Honored counselors, Hyun Woo said, humanity continues to monitor 7 sectors where devourer artifacts have been detected. We invite any species that wishes to help with this containment effort, but you must understand the risks involved. Admiral Kextar, bearing scars from reality-distorting weapons, stood to address the council. The humans have carried this burden alone for 70 years, he said. They isolated themselves not from arrogance or fear, but to protect the rest of us from horrors we could not imagine. Elder Thren of the Threnodi spoke for the assembled representatives. We understand now why no species enters human territory.